Hello, I'm Jake Boudrot, Civic Journalist at Tello Community Television. This episode of Strait Talk is about a recent announcement that a local company constructed boats for the federal government. To gain more insight, I spoke with officials in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, as well as the local Member of Parliament, who is also the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. With me today is the Director of Conservation and Protection for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Maritime Region. Welcome, Noel Dotrema.
Hi, Jake. Nice to be here.
On February 20th, the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans, and the Canadian Coast Guard announced the arrival of two 44-foot vessels to replace the aging small vessel conservation and protection fleet. Can you first talk about these vessels? How did they compare to the vessels that were in the fleet?
Yeah, so these vessels are a great improvement for us. Our vessels prior to this had been relatively small. They hadn't kept up to the size of the fishing vessels that we're tasked with kind of enforcing. So these vessels they're built at Samson Enterprises in Cape Breton. They're 44 feet long. They allow fishery officers to go out farther offshore, handle larger fishing gear, so that we can inspect them for compliance with the Fisheries Act.
Now, you just noted that the vessels were built by Samson Enterprises just down the road from us here in Almadam. And Samson Enterprises was awarded the $5.4 million contract through an open, transparent, and fair process, the DFO noted. And maybe you can ask a little bit about that process. What did it entail? How long did it take? And what makes it open, transparent, and fair?
Well, I'm not a procurement expert, Jake, but it was posted on Public Service and Procurement's website. It's a bidding process. Folks put bids in, and they're reviewed for a variety of things.
What was it like working with Samson Enterprises, I guess, from the perspective of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans?
I'm not in procurement. We're the lucky ones that we get the assets after the procurement process goes through. The vessels, we're quite happy with the vessels. So the quality coming out of Samson's is quite well.
Yeah, I can see that. And they seem to be fulfilling the needs that you guys have and seem to be providing you guys with the vessels that you need and want right now at this point in time, as far as doing conservation and protection. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Like, they're not large, but they're not small, but go pretty fast, and they can seem to be able to hold a lot of material and stuff like that. And you alluded to that earlier, but maybe have you go into a little bit more detail on how they fulfill your mandate for conservation and protection.
Yeah, excellent question, Jake. So the mandate for us for conservation protection is to ensure compliance with the Fisheries Act. So a way we do that is we inspect fishing gear. That's really what these vessels are. It enables us to inspect the fishing gear. So we go out on the fishing grounds, we check gear, we ensure that the gear is properly marked, properly tagged, configured in a right way. There's escape panels that need to be in the fishing gear to allow small lobsters to be removed. So these are really the tools we need to do that kind of work.
Department of Fisheries and Oceans said fishery officers provided input into the design and specifications of the vessels to address the specific needs, which we just alluded to. What did this input entail? I assume you guys had to detail precisely what exactly you needed out of these vessels. And I assume you guys are an important part of the process.
Yeah, so we have a process. It's called SCAP, Small Craft Acquisition Program, and for any of these are considered, even though they're big to us, they are considered in the broader scheme of small craft, right? So the fishery officers identified the users. So we identified what we needed, the speed it needed to go, the water depth it could haul fishing gear in, the amount of gear it could hold. And then the procurement experts take that into consideration and work with, like the boat builder, in this case, Samson's, to produce a vessel.
And I know this isn't the first time that Samson has constructed vessels for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and I'm assuming since you guys went back to them that they must be doing a good job, must be doing something right to meet your needs.
Well, you kind of answered that question. Yeah, this isn't the first time we've gotten stuff from them. We're happy with the product, Jake.
So I understand that according to DFO, the home port for one of the vessels will be Yarmouth, and the other will be shared between Shetty Camp and Pictou. So that second vessel, does that mean it's going to be monitoring the waters off of Northumberland Strait?
So I'm the director for Maritimes. The one that you're referencing there is going to Gulf region. Not sure where they're going to monitor theirs, but we have a second one here in the Maritimes that is going to be based probably we call it Eastern Nova Scotia, so anywhere from Dartmouth up until Sydney.
That's a large area. Does that one kind of move around from port to port and at certain times? Is that how that works?
Yeah, we'll task the vessel to where the need is, to where the fishery is operating at the time.
So when it's stationed in a port like that, what exactly does it do? You guys are out monitoring the fishery and what's going on, and make sure there's adherence to the rules and regulations type of thing. Is that what does a typical I guess trip for you guys entail?
Yeah, good question. So these are day boats. They're not vessels that we're going to be spending nights on or anything like that. So the fishery officers will leave in the morning, go out to the fishing grounds. Like these are primarily gear checking, like gear checking vessels. They'll check for compliance to ensure the fishing gear is, like I said, properly marked, configured in a right way. And and then at the end of the day, they come home.
So if gear does not adhere to the rules and regulations, what happens there? It gets seized, taken on the boat, and what's the process there when someone violates the Fisheries Act?
Yeah, so any gear that doesn't have that isn't configured the right way, it's subject to seizure by fishery officers. Based on the circumstance, the gear could be taken on board the vessel, brought back to shore, and then the fishery officers would initiate a conversation with the gear owner.
So I'm assuming this is largely to do with lobster fishery, because that's the biggest fishery in this neck of the woods and in most of the areas around here. So I assume we're talking about lobster traps and bans and things of that nature as well. Do you guys also monitor the size of lobster and the catches that the harvesters are getting?
Absolutely. That would require a boarding onto another vessel to check that the catch is of legal size.
Now, how have things been going so far? I know I haven't gotten a lot of press releases about violations of the Fisheries Act in some time, actually. And it seems like things have quieted down for the most part and settled down. I'm sure there are violations here and there, but what's your take on how things are going right now?
Yeah, so the Maritimes region, right? We have a large swath of lobster fishing areas. We go to Bay of Fundy, off of Yarmouth, like I said, all the way to Shetty Camp. So our bigger commercial seasons are open right now. Some of them are getting ready to open in the spring.
How long would you guys be using these vessels for? What's the lifespan of them? On an average, I guess.
I don't have the exact lifespan that we anticipate them to stay in service, but just based on what I've seen in previous vessels that we've brought on, like a 15 to a 20-year, 25-year period is what we would think these vessels to remain in service. As the fishery changes, our vessels have to change as well, and that's what brought us to where we are today with getting to this size, because the previous vessels were too small.
I'm glad to hear that the local company was able to fulfill your needs, and I'm sure that that's a great thing for them. It's a nice feather in their cap to producing vessels for you guys that are being used and are much needed. So I know you can't comment much about how it impacts them, but I'm sure it's pretty easy to assume that it's a thing for them to, I guess, brag about.
Yeah, I would assume as well. You'll have to come out on the boat next time we get another one.
Yeah, that sounds great. That would be a nice trip. I wouldn't mind making one of those. I guess we'll have to look at the spring maybe sometime, but I might take you up on that offer. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Noel. I know you are a busy guy, and I appreciate you speaking with me and answering my questions and talking to our viewers. Thank you.
Yes, thank Jake. Hope to see you again.
Debbie Boudrot-Matheson, Manager of Strategic Communications with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Maritimes region, explained this was an open procurement process, with Samson Enterprises winning the $5.4 million contract. She said a tender notice for these patrol vessels was posted on the canadabuys.gc.ca website on November 10th, 2022, and closed on December 5th, 2022. Boudrot-Matheson said the estimated cost per vessel is $1.02 million, which is funded through the Small Craft Acquisition Program. She said the program's mandate is to replace the aging small craft fleet within DFO and the Canadian Coast Guard over the next 25 years. With me today is the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. Welcome back, Mike Kellaway.
Thanks, Jake. And I can say that in a couple of hours, I'll be the Parliamentary Secretary for ACOA in addition to Fisheries.
The Department of Fisheries and Oceans recently announced that two 44-foot vessels built by Samson Enterprises here in Almadam have been added to their conservation and protection fleet. Perhaps you can comment on what this means for the local business, for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and for the region.
Well, it means investment in the local economy, number one, in a company that has proven itself, workers who have proven themselves rather, and the supply chain in Isle Madame that are connected to the building of these new vessels. Look, we're in a new world now where we need more resources in play when it comes to conservation and protection, from the East Coast to the West Coast to the Great Lakes, and now more so than ever the North. And there's an element of obviously focusing on illegal activities, but also Canadian sovereignty when it comes to protection. This goes back, though, to a fundamental difference. Either you invest in people and infrastructure and resources, or you don't. There's a choice. For me, the choice of investing in vessels that are going to protect resources and people is really, really critical. But here's the other critical thing. And this is something that I'll put my other hat on, my new hat of Parliamentary Secretary for ACOA. We need to ensure that in the supply chain, that rural Canada is a part of it in a meaningful way. Meaning companies like Samson that are building vessels, exceptionally important, number one. Number two, the fact they're in rural Canada, even more important. And number three, we need to do more of it. Not everything should emanate from Halifax or Montreal or Toronto or Vancouver when it comes to contracts that focus on creating new vessels. There's a lot of talent, a lot of resources, and a huge track record. So it's something I'm really pleased about. But again, there is a mindset that we shouldn't invest in new vessels, that we need to ensure that, one argument be we need to spend less money. I would say that we need to spend money strategically. And to me, an investment in the people, and this gives me a chance to say it again, the people that work for conservation and protection are the amazing professionals, but they need the resources, they need the tools, because the world's getting dangerous, more dangerous. And so we need those resources. And the fact that we're getting those resources from Isle Madame, that makes me so proud. Thank you for watching Strait Talk. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about.